Ujambo Espresso Talk Today community. Akwaba to the Espresso Talk Today show. Welcome to Espresso Talk Today. I'm Amma Robin, host of this great and groundbreaking podcast show. If you're just joining us today, then I wish you an especially happy and hearty Akwaba, or welcome, to the show and to the Espresso Talk Today community. Our community of amiable intellectuals welcomes everyone. We discuss everything from the happy and uplifting to the uncommon and the uncomfortable. Nothing is off the table here. Today's show is part of our financial empowerment series. Today, we are focusing on applying for financial aid for college. And we are joined again by financial aid specialist Kim Bradley, who's returning to discuss the most important application that you need to complete for federal financial aid, the FAFSA. She's going to explain it. You're probably thinking, didn't President Biden forgive student loans? Well, yes and no. He did, but the Supreme Court hasn't decided if that is actually going to happen. Frankly, and honestly, I'm always honest with my community, I would not rely on this Supreme Court to forgive any student debt. Maybe they'll forgive debt for the already rich and famous, but that's another story. I could be wrong about this court. I hope that I am. Time will tell. Until that time, if you need financial assistance for college, then you need this information, and you definitely need to hear this show about the FAFSA. And even if you don't need it, if you know someone else who does, then they definitely need to hear this show about the FAFSA. Asante sana to everyone for joining us today. This is a Black Empowerment podcast show. Black empowerment is financial empowerment, and financial empowerment is Black empowerment too, and we're getting empowered together. So a big asante sana to financial aid specialist Kim Bradley, who's going to help us get there. Let's get to it, and I'll see you after our uncommon conversation. Hey, Mel.
Hi, Robin. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I am doing fantastic.
I always makes me happy to hear you say that. Yeah, and I can see you really mean it too. And as you can see, I'm having an espresso with a dear friend, Kim Bradley. Do you remember her?
Kim,
Yes.
I do. I do.
Good morning.
Good
My-
morning.
Good morning. And besides being a dear friend, she's also an amazing financial aid specialist. And you remember last time we met with Kim, she gave us so much information and advice about applying for financial aid, like who needs it, who might not need it, when to apply, how to apply, and all the details in between. And I think we really learned a lot.
I did.
And but as much as Kim shared with us last time, there's still a lot to learn about financial aid. And it's great that Kim is so generous with her time and expertise, and plus she likes to join me for an espresso. And, and she thought that today we should focus on the FAFSA. That's what we're going to do because that's what the expert says, so we do that. And honestly,
The FAFSA, what does that mean?
well, you know what? I think just hearing that word or that acronym, FAFSA, might send chills down the spines of students throughout the country who need financial aid and maybe their parents too.
Wow.
Yeah, but I think Kim's advice today could help ease some of their fears and reduce their stress. And that's another reason why we're so grateful to Kim for being here and willing to impart her pearls of financial wisdom, financial aid wisdom. Yes.
Thank you.
In the Akan languages of Ghana, I say Akwaba Kim. Welcome.
Thank you, Robin. I enjoy being here. And thank you, Mel, for your lovely smile and generous spirit this morning.
Thank you for being here. My gosh, I just can't wait with all this information.
Oh, fine. Okay, so should we just jump right in?
I'm with
Yeah,
you.
because I
Okay.
know. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to jump right in and piggyback on what Robin said. Robin mentioned the word FAFSA, and I want to take this down to the stud so everybody understands this. FAFSA is an acronym, and it stands for free, and I'm putting emphasis on that, free application for federal student aid. What this application is, or it behaves as, it's like seeds. You're planting seeds for money, for resources. So this is where you start with most financial aid. You want a scholarship? Do the FAFSA. You want a Pell Grant? Do the FAFSA. You want state aid? Do the FAFSA. You want federal work study? Do the FAFSA. You want student loans? Do the FAFSA. Okay, so this is our foundation there. Any questions on that?
When you say free, the application itself is free, or what is the free?
Yes, the application itself is free. Years ago, students used to have to pay to apply for financial aid. And the federal government said, if students are needy, students are needy.
Mhm.
We shouldn't have to charge them to apply for money. I want to put an asterisk there. For those of you who may be applying to private colleges or historically Black colleges, you may have to do two applications. So you would start with the FAFSA, and you may need to do what is something that's called the CSS profile. And students will ask, well, how do I know if I need to do that or not? Well, for the schools you're applying to, get on their website. They are required to disclose on their website what forms are required for financial aid. Now, the CSS profile is used for institutional funds. And what does that mean to Joe Sixpack? To Joe Sixpack, that means, let's take Harvard, for example. Harvard has one of the largest endowments in the country. And what that is money from private donors that the school can give to students to help cover the cost of education, but it's private funds. And as a result of it being private funds, they can ask as many questions as they want. The CSS profile is like the FAFSA on steroids. And the CSS profile, you have to pay for that application. There's a $25 base fee and then $16 for each school that you want to list. And again, if you want to know if you need to fill that CSS profile out, go to a school's website. I'm going to take the CSS profile out of this conversation for now because I don't want people to confuse it.
Okay.
So those are separate seeds. And I may reference it again, but I will make sure that it's not in the context of the FAFSA, I will say on the CSS profile. So here's one of the most common mistakes people make about the FAFSA is they wait too late to apply. They think they have to be enrolled and or accepted to a particular school to apply. You do not. I want to emphasize that. It's just an application. The school doesn't give any money out until you're enrolled. So there's no harm, no foul for applying. Having said that, often people will ask me, well, when's the deadline? And I'm going to say this as delicately as possible. We tend to wait a little while to do things, and that doesn't work out in our favor. So, well, instead of asking when is the deadline, which is like asking what time a movie ends when it comes to financial aid, because the longer you wait, the less money that's available, and your money's going to arrive late. So instead of asking about deadlines, ask when can I apply? So, do we have people out there asking, when can I apply for the FAFSA? Let's say, for example, you are enrolled in college right now. You can apply for financial aid right now. for this fall 2020 semester, or if you're in a quarter school, a trimester school, you can apply right now. Is it late? Yeah, it's late, but you could still possibly get something. My advice to students and parents is to apply for as many things as you can. Let the financial aid office disqualify you. Don't disqualify yourself by not applying. Having said that about this current term, the application period is also open now for the 23-24 academic year. And what does that mean? Some schools start their academic year in the summer, which is called a header. So you might want to put that on the sticky side of your brain because very few schools will explain that to you in writing. That summer begins their academic year. Other schools, summer ends their academic year. Fall may be the first term in the academic year. Having said that, if you plan to go to college in summer of 2023 and or fall of 2023, you also need to do the FAFSA, which makes me say the FAFSA is an annual form. You need to do it once a year. So every October 1st, the open season to start applying for financial aid is October 1st. So let's use me an example. I'm going to pretend I'm a student who's never had financial aid before, and I'm in college now, and I know I want to go next year. I need to do two FAFSAs. I need to do one for the 22-23 academic year and the 23-24 academic year.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Well, what you're saying is you're continuing applying as you go through college, the academic year
Absolutely.
you're in and the next one coming up. And if you continue on through graduate school,
Absolutely. So every October 1st, let's say you want to be a doctor,
Mhm.
every October 1st until you're done with your residency, you need to apply for financial aid.
Mhm. Wow.
Well, I have one question. I just had an issue with my bank where they were saying that I need to submit the same form every year. But if it hasn't substantially changed, he said, just photocopy it and send it in to us. Is that the way the FAFSA works too when you're applying the second time? The next time? Every time?
Sort of. The only thing that stays is basically the demographic information. All the financial data is you need to answer those questions again.
Okay.
Even if the
So,
information is the same as the last application.
yes, which is possible but not probable when it comes to finances. Because even if you're just a few bucks off, they want to know what the difference is.
Oh, wow, really? Okay.
Yes. I was going to give some backstory legal information, but that's not for the audience. So I'll just keep it simple.
Okay.
So I've talked about applying for the FAFSA, and people probably wonder, well, where is it? How do I apply for it? Okay, so here it is. You're going to go to studentaid.gov on the internet. And once you land on studentaid.gov, there's a bar there that reads apply for the FAFSA. You're going to click on that. So this studentaid.gov website is the federal student aid website. So this is everything that falls under the regulations for federal student aid. Now, having said that, most states mirror the same criteria as federal student aid. So for California, if I want aid from the state of California, I still need to do the FAFSA. And I will talk about how the state of California gets that information
Okay.
or other states. Okay, so I'm going to look at Robin's questions too. She submitted some questions, and I want to make sure that I cover those. Okay. Um, Her first question is I have no tax returns. Since I did not work and earn any reportable income, can I still apply for federal aid? Yes. And here's the second part of that answer. Oftentimes students and or parents feel because they didn't work or they didn't fill out a tax return, there's nothing to report. Well, the FAFSA does many things. And one of the things it does is a mini background check on the student. So in providing some of this data, and I'll get to that in a moment, um, there are fraud mitigation efforts going on behind the scenes. And excuse me, there are database matches. So it's more than just submitting financial data. In addition, students and or parents can have money from various sources outside of income from work. So that needs to be reported as well. There are students and or parents whose income is so low, they're not required to file a tax return. You can still apply.
Okay.
So
But
I'll get,
yeah, should I file a tax return even if I have no income? So at least they have that information that I have no income?
no, we'll get to that.
Okay, okay, sorry.
Um, so the only thing that would probably do is slow you down.
Okay.
If you don't need to file a tax return, you're not required to, don't do it. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to start with how the application flows, and I'll give information on some of the common mistakes and what type of problems that causes for the
Okay.
common mistakes.
Oh,
So the first,
can I ask one
sure,
question?
absolutely.
Okay, as you said, like mistake number one was applying too late. And I did look at, studentaid.org, I mean, .gov, and they have on there in these big letters, oh, what did it say? Some states and schools have limited funds, so don't delay. So they're not joking about that, and that's not just to scare you. They're serious about it.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And one of the things I often tell students at my college during peak period, we get roughly 100 financial aid applications a day. So you wait 5 days, you're 500 students behind. I can't fathom what that's like at Ohio State
Mhm.
or Stanford or some of these very large institutions. If you wait 5 days, you might be 4,000 students behind. So, will you still get processed? Yes, but there may be some funds that have been depleted by the time they get to you.
Hmm.
Wow. Okay. Okay. And do you know like which states have the limited funds? Because they didn't mention that on the site. Or fewer funds.
My PR answer is going to be all states have a finite amount of funds.
Mhm.
And, they typically do a lot of research on how many students are graduating from high school, how many are still in college. We're going to set our budget this way. And they recognize they can't fund everybody who applies. So the sooner the better.
Okay. No matter what state you're in, the sooner the better. Yeah.
Right,
Mhm.
right. And again, don't disqualify yourself by not applying. Still go ahead and apply and see what happens.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. So the first question on the FAFSA is the student's name. And this is where a lot of people have a problem. As I mentioned earlier,
Yeah.
you would think, why are people having a problem with their name? As I mentioned earlier, there is a background check that is done on financial aid applicants. And one of the background checks is checking the Social Security Administration database. So they're wanting to look at your name and make sure it matches the Social Security number you put on the FAFSA. And that means you can't abbreviate. So, for example, my legal name on my Social Security card is Kimberly. That's my first name. I hate that name. I only want to be called Kim, but I can't put that on the FAFSA because it would not match with the Social Security Administration.
Hmm.
So, when there is no match with the Social Security Administration, for lack of a better word, your application kind of gets pushed to the side. They tell the school and the student, look, your name doesn't match. We want to see your social security card, your birth certificate, and maybe even your passport.
Hmm.
So it is imperative to follow instructions. Your name must appear on the FAFSA as it does on your social security card.
Hmm.
Social Security.
But it's interesting because there's nothing that tells you that, if I mean and there's no little fine line or fine
Let
print
me see.
thing that tells you that.
I'm looking at the FAFSA right now. Um, let's see. No, it doesn't. But see, I have the PDF. I don't know what it reads online.
Oh, okay, okay.
Okay, so one of the reasons I printed out the PDF and not show you the what it looks like online
Mhm.
is it has skip logic. So I have to pretend all these things, and then it may not cover some of the questions. I printed out the PDF to address every question that's going to be possibly asked.
I see. So if a person's name is James, they shouldn't say Jim because everybody calls him Jim.
Exactly.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Or
You
you have a
must be
hyphenated name or something, and yeah.
right. Yes. And hyphenated names are a problem. I'm glad you mentioned that, Robin,
Mhm.
because oftentimes students will vacillate on whether to add both last names or not. So sometimes they'll add it, sometimes they won't.
Mhm.
And that's not going to match. It has to match character for character.
Wow. Okay. That's really good to know. You think name,
Yes, it
that's
is.
easy, but it's not. No.
Yeah, exactly. And then the next thing they ask is for an address.
Mm,
And how do students mess up on an address? Well, they do. And here's another thing that happens. The federal government is checking to see if that's a real address, that you didn't send them out back in the bush somewhere with some fake address. And
mhm.
this is one of those fraud mitigation efforts. So make sure what you're writing down or you're typing in is accurate. One of the problems we see with students is they rush through it. So, for example, we'll have students who will type in the city as the state. Well, the
Mm,
problem with that, it's not a viable address.
mhm,
So something like that, and I see it often, and I know students probably are like, what the heck? We can't give out funds if these things aren't matching.
mhm,
And having said that, your name, whatever name you apply to your admissions or registrar, that needs to match as well, because that's a fraud mitigation effort. All these things need to match. So we have students, everything's clean on the FAFSA, but down in admissions, their name is Jimbo. Well, Jimbo, you're actually James.
Oh, yeah.
We need to fix this.
mhm,
It all needs to match.
mhm,
So it's very important to take the FAFSA seriously. I recognize it can be intimidating. I recognize it can be confusing. However, don't make it worse on yourself by rushing through it. This
mhm.
is basically going to be an open book test about you and your family.
Okay.
So you got to approach it as a homework assignment and not Macy's instant credit.
That's great.
Okay.
I'd
Okay.
like
So
to I'd like to follow up on the address because some students may live out in a rural area and there's a PO box and not a street address. How does that work? Or is that a problem?
that's not a problem.
Okay,
Okay.
good to know.
Okay, so the next question that people often make a mistake on is their date of birth. They'll transpose the month and the year, or the month and the day. And unfortunately, with a lot of immigrants, they come from countries where the day is listed first, then the month, then the year.
Mhm,
So you might have somebody put for the month the 20th. Like
mhm,
there are no 20 months, what the heck. But it's like they're accustomed to doing day, month, year, where it should be month, day, year. And again, that needs to be accurate because all these things are checking to make sure everything matches.
mhm.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
But the
And
form doesn't prompt you on that. It doesn't say like in little things like month, day, year. It doesn't prompt you, huh? The
it
form.
does.
It
It
does.
does.
Okay. Just be careful on that. Okay.
Yes. Oh, one of the things I should have mentioned is if you're doing your application online, which is the recommended way to do it because it's quicker. You can do a paper application, but this is Stone Ages. It'll take like 3 times as long to get through the process. But there are students that have to do a paper app, and I'll get back to that in a moment. Um, so you mentioned the date of birth. Um, the next problem or common problem is the question, are you a US citizen?
Mm.
And you wonder, how do people get that screwed up? Well, oftentimes you'll have an immigrant, let's say they came over on a green card,
Mhm.
but eventually they become a naturalized citizen.
Mhm.
So what will happen, a common mistake, is people will indicate yes, they are a US citizen, and then enter the A number from their green card.
Hmm.
Okay, so then that's a problem because there's a Department of Homeland Security background check, and they're going, wait a minute, they said they're a citizen. Why are they putting their A number? If you become a naturalized citizen, that A number does you no good. Don't put it in. You're just going to delay your financial aid.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
when that what happens when that does happen, when someone puts their A number and says they're a US citizen, their application goes over into the problem pile and they tell the school and the student, this doesn't make sense. Ask for proof of being a US citizen. So now we either want your birth certificate or your certificate of naturalization. So
Mhm.
now you've delayed yourself again. So follow those instructions. You're a naturalized citizen now. Don't use that A number. It's dead. Okay. For
Okay.
those who are on a green card or they're a refugee or whatnot, you do need to disclose the A number in marking. There's a question, I'm an eligible non citizen. And that it tells you what are eligible non citizens. You
Oh,
know,
that's. Mhm.
students who are visiting on a visa, on a student visa, they're not eligible for federal student aid.
Mhm.
So they're not an eligible non citizen. People who are in the United States and have only a work authorization card, you're not eligible either. We're talking refugees, asylum seeker, those people are eligible.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay. Hmm.
Yeah, who thought the demographic information would cause such problems, right? We
Yes.
haven't got to the money yet, the finance part of it yet. Okay, so number 16 on the FAFSA, here's another common mistake. And this is applicable to the student and or if the parent is completing the FAFSA. It asks, what is your marital status as of today? You know, some people are excited they're getting divorced and they go ahead and mark divorce, but they're not divorced yet.
Mhm.
It's as of the date they're filling out the FAFSA form. What is your marital status? If you're going to get married, it's the same thing. If you're not married on the day that you fill it out, excuse me, your marital status should be single.
Mhm.
Okay.
In marking this wrong, it becomes a problem because the FAFSA is expecting certain answers. So you mark that you're married and you're not. We want your spouse's information. And
Oh.
then you're going to say, well, I'm not married. Now you're over to the side in the problem pile.
Mhm.
Now we got to unscramble this egg. So again, approach the FAFSA very seriously. This is an open book test, and you want to get all your questions right. Think
Mhm.
of it as a way of getting paid of doing homework, basically. So
Wow.
any,
I,
I
I could
know.
I could ask a question about common law marriages that are legal in some
Oh
states.
yes, yes. I'm glad you mentioned that because for common law, you only report if you're in a common law state, you
Mhm.
can report your spouse's
Mhm.
income. For California, for example, it doesn't recognize common law. So you're cohabitating with someone, asterisk, I'll get there in a moment. We typically don't want their information, but I'll get there.
Okay.
There's an asterisk on that. It's like, yeah, that's a whole other
Okay.
problem.
Okay.
I'm glad you did bring that up about common law because we do get a lot of questions about that. And I want to be clear that it's based on the state of residence for the student because you'll have a student that thinks, well, I'm just going to use this example, and I don't know if Kentucky has common law. I'm from Kentucky, and I'm going to school in California, but I still want to report. I mean, not report my spouse's income because I'm in California. You don't recognize it. It's like, well, your legal state of residence is Kentucky. You must
Oh.
report it. If
Mhm.
Kentucky, I want to be clear, I'm not certain. I'm just using that as an example.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so here's another big problem. Are we past five? Five problems. We're past five
I think
problems, right?
so.
That
Okay, so
didn't take
here's
long.
another. Here's I know, right? Here's another question that students often get wrong. It's question number 26. Listening out there, put this on the sticky side of your brain, please. The question reads, what will your high school completion status be when you begin college in the 22-23 school year?
Hmm.
And some students, because they're still in high school, will say, I don't have a high school diploma. But the question read, what will it be when you start school? Right? So we will have students that say they don't have a high school diploma. That is one of the basic tenets of being eligible for financial aid is having a high school diploma. So you put no, you over in the problem pile. You ain't eligible. And then you come back and say, wait a minute, why am I not eligible? Well, you said, you didn't have a high school diploma, but it's asking you what it going to be when you start school. So if you're graduating, you will have a high school diploma when you begin the academic year.
So I'll ask you about the GED. How does that work?
A GED is high school graduation equivalent, so it'll be the same thing.
Be the same
Is
thing.
that
Okay.
yes? And if a person is homeschooled as well,
Mhm.
if they're going to graduate from homeschooling, they can still, yes, high school diploma.
Okay.
So if students do not have a high school diploma and they want to return to college and get financial aid, I would strongly encourage you to do your GED
Mhm.
because otherwise there's nothing for you.
Mm.
Okay. Wow.
Okay, question 28 is a big issue too. If you're out there listening, put this one on the sticky side of your brain. And 28 reads, will you have your first bachelor's degree before you begin the 2022-2023 school year?
Mm.
And people, again, don't pay attention to the details. Yeah, I'm getting a bachelor's degree, and I'm a sophomore. I'm going to write that, yeah, I'm getting a bachelor's degree. Well, guess what? You're not eligible for Pell Grant if you already have a bachelor's degree, regardless of what your income is.
Mhm.
If you already have a bachelor's degree, there's no Pell Grant, and maybe not even some of the state programs. So I'm only speaking on California because I'm familiar with that. So you wouldn't be eligible for Cal Grants either if you indicate you have a bachelor's degree. So we have people who mark that wrong. And then we tell them, it's not a whole lot out there for you. Well, what happened? Well, you said you had a bachelor's degree. So don't have a bachelor's degree. Please don't mark that question. Yes.
The program.
Because then you have to unscramble that eggs, and some schools are very what's the word I'm looking for, persnickety, for lack of a better word. They don't let you just flip the answer. They're like, okay, we're going to do some research, make sure this person doesn't have a bachelor's degree somewhere.
Mm.
So
So what is a Pell Grant? What is that?
a Pell Grant is a grant from the federal government that is given to the most needy students, financially needy students.
Mhm.
It's something that doesn't have to be repaid. The maximum on that for a full time student for an academic year is a little over $6,000.
Mhm.
Mm.
So
Okay.
oftentimes you will hear schools and or political pundits talk about needy students, and they often use the Pell Grant to gauge how many needy students there are at a particular institution.
Mm.
So, based on the number of Pell Grant recipients, you may be considered, I don't know, for low income programs or whatnot on your
Mhm.
campus, other grants, both public and private. Okay, so our next big problem and big mistakes. Now we're on to the students' finances. Here's the biggest problem on this is it asked a lot of tax questions. So parents who are helping out Junior fill out the FAFSA form, they're thinking, certainly they're not asking Junior how much investments he has. What is adjusted gross income? That's my information that needs to go there. So the parents populate their information on the student side, and the student ends up not being eligible. Why is that? Well, the way the formula works to determine how needy, and basically needy means how poor a student and or family is. They look at the parent information much softer than the student information. And here's the why. Because the parents are typically older. The older a person is, the more financially needy they are deemed. Why? Because they're getting closer to retirement. So let's just say, for example, Junior is filling out his FAFSA. His parents made $60,000 a year, um, household size of four. He puts that on his side. You know, you earn $60,000 a year. You're 19 years old. The formula considers, well, why can't you pay for your college? You're 19 years old and you earn 60 grand, you know? So the formula, you put that in there, you've messed up the student.
Mm-hmm.
And then to back it out is a problem, depending on what institutions you apply. Some may just say, go ahead and fix it, zero it out. Others will say, we want a pound of flesh and these 5 documents for the IRS to prove you didn't work. So, okay, so for Junior, let's just go with Junior. I recognize, excuse me, that not all college applicants or financial aid applicants are 17, 18-year-olds coming out of high school.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of returning adults. This is the same form that would be used if someone's seeking aid for a master's degree or, again, going on to medical school, law school. This is the same form. So you do have students who have tax returns. Okay, so excuse me. Let's just say I'm Joe Sixpack and I worked at Target, for a couple months, only on $2,000, whatever. So I'm not going to put anything in here. Well, it does ask for income from work. So yes, it does ask you if you filed a tax return or not, and then it tells you, what um, questions to answer. However, if you did not work, you still need to list income from work. I mean, did not file. You still need to list income from work, no matter how small that is.
Okay. Okay.
So my little example, Joe Sixpack, you're going to enter $2,000 for income from work.
Mm-hmm.
Because oftentimes what'll happen is students and or parents just start clicking on stuff. Yeah, I think I filed or whatever. They think a W-2 form is a tax return. It's not. You got a W-2 form because you work. It's not a tax return. But then they go answer all these tax questions.
Mm-hmm.
And then it doesn't make sense. It's like, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. So we got to put you over in the problem file. What's going on here? Some of this stuff doesn't make sense. Well, I never get filed. I only worked at Target. Da, da, da. Well, now we got to unscramble this egg. Have a seat. You know? let me let me go back over to Robin's questions because I want to make sure I address those.
Okay.
Your question 2 is I do not have a bank account. So I do not have bank statements. Will this keep me from applying for federal student aid? No, it will not. However, some of the questions on here, here's where it gets confusing, and I recognize that. The tax questions are based on finances of the past because it asks for your tax returns from 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
What was that? The assets that are in a bank account The way the question reads, it's as of the date the student and or parent is completing the FAFSA. So I'm not going to say how much I had in the bank in my investments 2 years ago. It's as of the date I completed the FAFSA, even though some of these other entries are from a tax return from 2 years ago. So oftentimes what we have are students and or parents who want to force the question to be what they think it should be and not follow the instruction. You're just going to make it harder for yourself.
Let me
Okay.
ask
So,
you a question
sure,
about the bank. I mean, suppose a student just has, I mean, nowadays you have these debit cards and rather than even credit cards, and they're tied to a bank and they're in the student's name, but the parents are just funneling money in there to pay their expenses. How does that work?
I would not consider that an asset because it's something that's being utilized for living expenses.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like a checking account per se. You
Mm-hmm.
know, if it's just coming in, going right back out, why you're not really reporting. However, if a student has a savings account, yeah, we need to know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mm.
And that does get kind of tricky too, because you have some students who are getting in kind support. They may be living with a neighbor or a relative, and in exchange for room and board, they're doing chores or babysitting or something.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes, students may report that as a dollar figure, where it's just in kind support.
Mm-hmm.
It gets tricky. It gets
Mm-hmm.
really tricky. Okay, let me go back to Robin's questions. Okay, the form asks for records of untaxed income. What is this? Does it include gifts from parents and relatives? Okay, so here's some examples of untaxed income. Child support received,
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
um, payments to tax deferred savings plans. So you're having money deducted out of your paycheck to go towards your retirement. That's considered untaxed funds. And the reason they ask for these questions are different amount of money is treated differently in the formula. For example, you could have somebody income of work $10,000, and then you have somebody who has $10,000 of interest and or dividend income. Those numbers represent two very different things.
Mm-hmm.
The income from work is treated much softer in the formula because the formula recognizes, or Congress, because they wrote the formula, they recognize when someone's working, there are expenses associated with work, transportation, babysitting, meals out, dry cleaning, etc. Whereas somebody with $10,000 of interest dividend income, there are no expenses related to that. That's an asset. So it's treated differently in the formula. And one of the problems we have is students just they don't know what to do. These questions are overwhelming. They're just popping in numbers somewhere anywhere. It's a disaster
Mm-hmm.
because depending on where you put that information may not work out in the student's figure.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now here's how can I put this? One of the questions that I get very often, I want to be from students, I want to be independent. I take that back. Parents will say it too. He needs to be independent. We don't want to report parent data. He has nothing to do with it. Why do we need to report parent data? Okay, put this on the sticky side of your brain out there. The way the formula works, and this is both on the federal and state level, for most, and I'm putting emphasis on most because I need to come back to that. Most people, financial aid will add to what you can do, not replace what you can do.
Oh.
And they also, the formula is look to your parent before you look to the taxpayer. So the federal government wants to see, well, can your parent help you out or not? That's why they're asking that information. Well, Stu, I want to be independent. I don't want to report my parent income or da 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 da. So I'll get to the questions that will make them independent. And then they turn out not to be eligible. Well, why is that? They're not eligible for need-based aid. I'm going to go back to what we were talking about earlier, how the formula is softer on the parents because they're older versus the student.
Mhm.
It's kind of the same way with the income. It's looking at how many people in this household are relying on that income. So it'll ask, what's the household size? If you're a student, you have no dependents, well, why can't you pay for your education? Okay,
Mhm.
so don't be so eager to want to be independent.
Mhm.
So some of the questions that will make a student independent, they're married, if they were a veteran, if they were born before 1999, are they an emancipated minor? Um, it's like 15 on here. Oh, they have children that they support.
Mhm.
So you could be an 18-year-old and you have a kid. You're independent. You know, you could be 19 years old and you're a military veteran. You're independent. Be 20 years old, married, you're independent. So anyone under the age of 24 is considered a dependent if they cannot answer these independent questions in the affirmative. So if you can't say you're married, can't say that you have a kid or some of these other things, then you need to report parent data. I need to go back to most and I need to write myself a note. um, what I said was most. Okay. So when I said most people, financial aid will only add to what you can do and not replace it, there are two exceptions. One, those who are extremely poor. So if you have someone who has a zero EFC, and I will explain what that is later, it's basically a ranking number. The higher the number, the less need a student has. So you have students who may have a zero EFC. That means we need to give you all the money possible because you can't contribute. The other exception is merit based aid. Merit based aid does not look at finances. It's based on your talent or skill. For example, if you're an athlete or you're extremely smart or you have a talent, when I say talent, let's say you play the cello, you want to go to Juilliard, you might be the best cello player they've seen. They offer you a scholarship. They don't care about your income because this person's so awesome. We want them enrolled at our institution. Think of athletes the same way. You'll hear about athletes getting a full ride. That means everything's paid for and they're not considering finances. So, for example, if Steph Curry enrolled in my college, I'm giving him a scholarship. He's making a name for us. So, those are the two areas where some of it is everything to be paid for. We're not adding to it. We recognize those who are very poor need everything they can get, and those who are very talented, we don't care how much money you make. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, in one sense it does, but how do they know that you're one of these talented people?
Okay, so I'm going to speak on the 4-year level
Okay.
or 4-year and professional level.
Mhm.
What you apply on your admissions application.
Mhm.
Or they may be seeking, like you have scouts that go out to football games or whatever and look at these high school students to recruit them,
Mhm.
or they attend these. I was going to call, I can only think of the name in Hawaiian, Hoike, which is, a recital. Okay, so
Yes.
they go to these recitals and see, someone's extremely talented or whatnot. So they learn of who's talented either by what you put out there or what's on your admissions application
I
or your
see.
test scores or whatnot.
Mhm. Mhm.
Hmm. That's interesting because I just always felt that there was a real separation, not any overlap between the admissions application and the financial aid stuff and all of that. I thought that was completely separate, but there is some.
There is some overlap
Okay.
on many schools, especially the 4-year institutions.
Mhm.
A lot of times those scholarships, those are heavy recruiting tools, especially at private schools.
Mhm.
So they try to find a way, let's soften this cost of tuition for these students. and give those who are highly motivated or they're talented
Mhm.
some money, regardless of how much they earn
Wow.
for the family.
Okay. Okay. I mean, and are there other, I mean, other categories too, where there would be, uh, for such maybe indigenous populations or something like that, or not so much?
Yes, yes. In fact, I want to go back to something we discussed in our last podcast. Is I mentioned a nonprofit, bigfuture.org.
Yes.
Mhm.
Bigfuture.org is the ultimate college planning resource out there, in my opinion. It's everything you wanted to know about college, how to prepare for college, how to pay for college, scholarship search engine. So if you're indigenous, go to the scholarship search engine on Big Future. I'm going to ask you these questions, a bunch of questions about yourself, and then spit back out to the student. These are scholarships you should apply for
Mhm.
because you meet some of these eligibility criteria.
Mhm.
So there is a lot of stuff out there. I recognize a lot of students just go straight to Google to look for scholarships, but they may not be thinking about everything that they are. And that's some of the best advice I got from my mentor was when students are considering scholarships, think of everything that you are. So often I have students say to me, ask me, are there scholarships for Black students? Yes, there are, but you're more than just a Black person. You
Mhm.
may have a religious affiliation. You may be a military veteran. It may be your major or some of the volunteer work you have, or maybe a tragedy you've overcome. So there's a lot of different ways to get scholarships. It doesn't always have to be based on your grades. Now, granted, I don't know of anybody who gets a scholarship and they have a GPA less than 2.0, you know, but some scholarships are not weighed as heavily on the academics if there's something special. I remember a student years ago, he got a scholarship simply because he was a resident of Santa Barbara. Santa Barbara wanted to help their students.
Mhm.
Fantastic. Wow.
Yeah.
You applied. Yes.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I want to go back to the independent and parent information
Yes.
Okay.
because there are students out there who are not in contact with their parents or their situation doesn't fit neatly onto this FAFSA. So I'm going to give an example. You may have students who have parents that are abusive. Oftentimes we'll have students who mom got a new boyfriend, the boyfriend's beating us.
Mhm.
Yes, they're in contact with the mom, but we don't want them to be in contact with the mom. They're in a dangerous situation. Oftentimes, too, we'll have students from the LGBTQ community whose parents have disowned them
Mhm.
and will refuse to furnish any information for the FAFSA. So these students who are in this situation, put this on the sticky side of your brain, fill out the FAFSA as much as you can. And there's a question on there about unusual circumstances. Do you want your school to know this or whatnot? And it'll tell the school this student may need to do a dependency override. However, you can be proactive as a student. Remember, I was talking about going to the school's website. You can most likely find that form on the school's website under financial aid. It's called a dependency override. Now, what that does is it allows you to quote unquote appeal to not support parent or provide parent information.
Mhm.
However, the regulations are very specific for the schools. It can't be because my parents refuse to give me data for the form. Living with your parents, they don't want you to see their tax return, or they think they're going to get a bill because they've put their information on here. The feds are very specific in telling us you cannot do a dependency override for that specific situation. The only thing they allow for somebody in that situation where the parent refuses to provide information is an unsubsidized direct student loan. But you have to provide supporting documents to show that the parents will not provide the information. or if you have one of these other unfortunate situations, parents incarcerated, they're mentally ill, abusive, or whatnot, you're going to need to provide documentation. Oftentimes, students will just think they can write a statement. Well, then that becomes who's the better storyteller. So we can't do that. We need supporting documentation, maybe to show that the parent's incarcerated or the parent's mentally ill, or there's a police report behind their abuse.
Mhm.
And one of the things I've sadly realized in all the years that I've been in financial aid, with each passing year, it gets tougher and the questions are more difficult. And, the monitoring is heavier. Why? Because there's so many fraud rings out there.
Mm.
So if you're mad at your school because they keep asking for this documentation and that, it's the reason why, because of fraud mitigation. Somebody's milking the system, be mad at them that you got to turn in extra paperwork because so many people are milking the system.
Mhm.
Wow. Mm.
Let me go back to Robin's questions. See,
Okay.
didn't I say this was going to take a while? Okay.
You did.
Okay.
This is great, though.
Okay, so when you asked about the untaxed income, the second part is, does it include gifts from parents or relatives?
Mhm.
Um, Again, that's one of those fluid things. It's kind of semantics. Well, if your uncle gave you 2 grand, did you put it in your savings account? You
Mhm.
did. You got to report it.
Mhm.
Your uncle gave you 2 grand and you went out and spent it. No, you're not reporting it.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mm.
Okay, so the next question, can I apply for federal aid if I'm going to college in a foreign country?
Um,
Yes and no.
I love that answer.
It's a lawyer answer. It depends. It depends. Okay, so it depends on that institution. There are institutions out there that the federal government has allowed them to use their money to help students pay for college. So the
mhm.
school has to be eligible. You just can't pick any of, I'm going to Oxford and I want the United States to pay for it. No, they ain't paying for you to go to Oxford.
Not gonna happen.
It has to be a school that the United States has said yes. And
Mhm.
how do you know that? You go to their website and see if you can apply for financial aid.
Hmm.
Well, I would imagine like the American University of Paris, that kind of stuff, or Madrid, those would be
Yeah,
eligible.
yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, so then let's see. Next question. Can I use federal aid form to apply for state and other financial aid and scholarships? Yes. As I mentioned earlier, the FAFSA is like seeds. So you need to start there with the seeds. You need to start with the FAFSA.
But is it the same form? I mean, do you have to fill out a different form for the state and for other scholarships, or that one form just kind of goes everywhere?
Both.
Oh,
Okay, so
oh,
I knew
so
it.
yes and
I,
yes.
I'm gonna use myself as an example. I'm a student. I'm in California.
Mhm.
As long on the FAFSA, I answer the residency question correctly. So
Mhm.
that would be, let me make sure I got the right number. People put this, it's number 18 on the FAFSA. Put this on the sticky side of your brain.
Mhm.
That you want to make sure that 2 characters, state characters, is accurate. Because one of the problems we had here in California, especially when students were writing in, is their C looked like an L. So it was processed as Louisiana, data
Oh.
sent over to Louisiana. They ain't never heard of you. Okay. In Louisiana. So make
Mm.
sure that's accurate. And different states have different criteria to determine if you're a legal resident of that state. So, yes, in answer to your question for California and in many other states, I use the FAFSA for this form. However, some states also have additional forms
Mm.
for their money. How do you know that? You go to the website, find out. That's how you know that on the school's website. To find out what other forms are needed.
Mm.
And also, oh, I do need to add this. Also, states implement their own deadlines, or I should say, window to apply. So it may be sooner than you expect or want it to be. So you need to really read the website. How do you know? You read the website, find out if there's an earlier deadline to complete the FAFSA for state funds.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, let's say I come from a really poor family. Um, my EFC is zero, which means that I really need money. I get the Pell Grant, and now I've applied for the state grant. I need to submit additional forms in addition to the FAFSA for
Mm-hmm.
California.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Okay, yes. Okay, so, oh, I like this one. Question number 6. Once I complete my application, can I have one of the federal aid assistants look at it before I submit it? Yes and no. So while you're on studentaid.gov and you're completing your FAFSA, on the right-hand side, there's a chat feature where if you have questions, you can click on certain things, say, I have a question about this field. And a chat, either a robot or a human being, will come on and help you with it as you go along.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you're at home doing it and you want somebody to look at, there really is nobody on standby to go over this whole thing with you.
Mm-hmm.
My recommendation for students and parents out there, if there is a financial aid application, quote unquote, FAFSA workshop, attend that to get help completing it if you want somebody to look it over before you submit it. And to be quite frank, most schools do not have the resources to look over several FAFSAs and do their daily duties in the financial aid office.
Mm-hmm.
You may be able to get help with certain questions, but we can't hold your hand for all 80 questions. So ask the questions as you're doing it online with the chat box or the human being that comes on, or go to the workshop if one's being offered in your area. And oftentimes states will sponsor financial aid application workshops. So how do you know? On the website, find out if your workshop's coming up. Once I complete, oh, you did that already. 7, when should I expect to hear about my application after I have submitted it? So the student does the application online, submits it. It goes to what is called CPS, which is a central processing system, does these database matches, makes a recommendation on how strong or weak your family's financial situation is. Takes about 3 to 5 days. So what happens in 3 to 5 days is you get an email, the student, that says you completed a FAFSA form. And on there, there will be messages to the student, depending on how they answered their questions or depending on what was revealed in the database matches or both. So some may say, you were selected for a process called verification. Both
Okay.
the students and staff hate this one because this means we want to verify what you put on the FAFSA. Please provide us with your tax returns and bank statements.
Mm.
So it's important that you read that. The other thing it does in 3 to 5 days is it also gives you a transcript of what you entered. So it wants you to review it for accuracy. If it's accurate, fine, no harm, no foul. The next thing you should be hearing from the school shortly thereafter of what you need to do or what you don't need to do.
Okay.
Having said that, all financial aid activity is time sensitive. So if there is something you need to correct, for example, you put the parent information and the student information side, you need to fix that swiftly. Your school reaches out to you, check your email, your snail mail, your text messages, social media. Follow that, read it, find out what's going on in financial aid, what's going on with your specific financial aid. Is there a new scholarship that's been introduced for women on campus that I want to apply for? You know, read your emails. We have students, and this was even at the law school level. Nobody told me. What do you mean? Well, you didn't read your mail. How else are we going to communicate with you? We don't do door to door. We either send you a text message, snail mail, or an email. It's all time sensitive. Read it.
Okay. Okay.
So how secure is the information you submit when you're submitting your social security numbers? I mean, the parents' financial data, assets, IRS returns and all of that. And how secure is that? I mean, should a student be or a parent be concerned that someone could get that information who is not supposed to have it?
Yes. Oh, I would say I've not known of somebody intercepting. No, I do want to qualify. I've not known anyone intercepting this data online and then using it maliciously. I have encountered where a relative will apply for financial aid under somebody else's name that they know, a sibling or a child, where they've misused it that way. So,
So the information is relatively secure.
relatively secure. If you're going to a public place like a library to do your FAFSA, I would not recommend that. You don't know who's shoulder surfing you. You don't know if somebody put spyware on public computers. So I get it that may be your only option, but if you can, do it on a private laptop, desktop.
Okay.
I mean, well, honestly, they're, hackers everywhere. You're just going to have to take the chance, or decide you're not going to apply for financial aid. So you just have to do it.
Exactly. Okay. Oh, I do want to also say when you asked if somebody could help, if you're not on the chat box, you can also call 1-800, the number 4, FEDAID. Say that again. 1-800, the number 4, FEDAID. So you can call as well to get help as you go along.
Oh, that's great. Okay. So that's
So
100 for Fed aid.
yes.
Okay.
Number 8, and we just covered that. Should I routinely check the status of my federal financial aid application? Yes. Okay. Number 9, do my parents have to sign anything? Oh, this is a good one. Do both parents have to sign? What if they're divorced or separated? Okay, so do my parents have to sign anything? If you're deemed dependent, filling out the FAFSA, when you do it online, it has skip logic. So if you couldn't answer questions that make you independent, it's going to ask you for the parent information. So do they need to sign something? Yes, they also need to sign the FAFSA. Now, the FAFSA, and I didn't cover this, they have something called an FSAID, which stands for Federal Student Aid Identification Number. So when you're doing the FAFSA, it's going to prompt you to get that. It's like a PIN number that you get, and you sign with the PIN number. So the student needs one, and the parent needs one. So only one parent has to sign if the parents are married.
Okay.
So the next part of this question, what if they are divorced or separated? Okay, so we'll start with the easy one. If they are divorced the day that you complete the FAFSA, then the only questions that are answered is for that one custodial parent who's caring for the child.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay.
What if they separated? Are they legally separated? So sometimes, and it depends on the school and some other questions that the student has put, answers the students put on the FAFSA. If the parents are listed as separated, sometimes the schools will ask for proof of a legal separation.
Mm.
Then you have some parents where it's not a legal separation. Some schools may accept different utility bills at different addresses to prove that the parents are separated.
Oh, okay.
Now, I want to visit the CSS profile, and I want to be clear that what I'm about to say is only applicable to the CSS profile. And this is the application that may be used at some private schools. The CSS profile will ask for the non-custodial parent information in addition to the custodial. So if the parents were never married or the parents are divorced, CSS says, we want to know it all. Before you get our private money from our donors,
Mhm.
what's your financial strength? Now, on the CSS profile, one of the questions that is asked that is not asked on the FAFSA is about the parent's home equity.
Hmm.
Okay.
Now, on the FAFSA, it does not ask for the parent's home equity. So when you're filling out the CSS profile, if you have to do that, you want to get that information from the mom and dad, or if you yourself are a homeowner and you're applying for financial aid, you need to report the home equity on the CSS profile.
Mhm.
Okay, next question. What if my parents are deceased and I live with my grandparents? Do I have to submit their information? This happens a lot where dad's in jail, mom's in rehab, the kid moves in with grandma and grandpa, but they're not formally adopted. So the grandparent information is only reported if the student has been legally adopted by the grandparent. With both parents being deceased in this particular question, the way that reads, this student would be considered an orphan. So they would be considered independent. And there is a question on the FAFSA that asked, are you an orphan?
Hmm. Okay.
But
Uh,
do they define what an orphan is on the form?
I don't believe they do. Let me make sure.
Because I think typically in the Black community, we live with different aunts and
Right.
uncles and grandparents, and we just move around a
Okay.
lot, but we never consider ourselves to be orphans.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay. So on question 52 on the FAFSA, excuse me,
Mhm.
Okay. Question
it
52.
reads, at any time since you turned age 13, were both of your parents deceased? Were you in foster care or were you a dependent or ward of the court? So let me see what the instructions read for question number 52. Okay, so this is the definition that's under 52. You had no living parent, even if you are now adopted. You were in foster care, even if you are no longer in foster care. You were dependent or ward of the court, even if you were no longer a dependent or ward of the court today. For federal student aid purposes, someone who is incarcerated is not considered a ward of the court. If you're not sure you were in foster care, check with your child welfare agency. You can find that agency's contact information and they have a website there. So that's what the
Okay,
instructions
so don't be concerned about the term orphan as we would normally think, but the
right.
situation that you described. Yeah.
It's interesting you mentioned about the Black community because that is often what happens is that well, I live with my aunt or I live with my grandma, so I'm gonna put their information down because that's Big Mama.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now you got the legal side. It's like going back to that Jimbo James thing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Now we need to tighten it up and make it legal.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, so number 11. Do I have to reveal that I have scholarships in my federal aid application? Ooh, child. This is the first answer. It depends.
I love your answers.
Yeah, it depends. Um, I typically, scholarships generally are not reported on the FAFSA. And when I say generally, I'm putting an asterisk there. There may be fellowships, especially on the graduate professional level, fellowships where a student's getting paid. You need to report that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Federal work study, and I need to be very clear about this. It does not count against the student in evaluating their financial strength on the FAFSA.
Mm-hmm.
However, it must be reported on the FAFSA in two places. Okay, so and I'm going to explain why in two places and give a scenario why it's in two places. Let's say I did work study over the summer for 3 months and I earned $1,500. And then I worked at Target for a few months and I earned $4,000. So now I have $5,500 of income. So in answering the question on the FAFSA, I'm going to cheat for you guys and tell you what number it is
Okay.
for a student. Let's see. Number 38, it asks, how much did you earn from working in 2020? You'll see it. That's just a slabbed answer. Well, I worked at Target and I did work study, so I'm going to report 5,500. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Then on question number 43, this is where it's reported. 43D, taxable college grant and scholarship aid. I'm sorry, C, taxable earnings from need-based employment programs. That's federal work study, or as some colleges call it, college work study,
Mm-hmm.
such as federal work study and need-based employment portions of scholarships and assistantships. So
Okay.
you put that there because what that does for the formula, it takes out that $1,500 that I earned from work study and only looking at the income that I earned working at Target.
Okay.
So that's why it's reported in two places
Mm-hmm.
because the formula treats the entries different based on where they are. Now, if you don't put your work study earnings on question number 43, they're going to assess all of this income 5,500. They're going to look at all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, last question. 12. I want to apply to other colleges after submitting my application. Do I have to submit another federal aid application? No. On the FAFSA, students can list up to 10 schools on the FAFSA that they want to get this data. I often encounter very ambitious students who are applying to 20, 30 colleges. What do I do? Well, you start out by putting your first choices on that first 10 and probably the most expensive on that first 10. Once you get back your results, which is called a student aid report, it will show which schools they sent this information to. Excuse me. What you can do is go back onto your FAFSA on studentaid.gov, remove some schools because it's already been sent, and then add the other 10 or 15 or what, you just keep doing it till all the schools get it. Now, having said that, here is something to pretty please, I'm down on my knees, put this on the sticky side of your brain out there, please. If you change schools, let's say you transfer, let's say I'm at the University of Texas, but I want to go to Michigan, University of Michigan. You don't tell the school, and this is what students will often do. Can you just transfer my financial aid over to Michigan? Don't work like that, darling. No. It needs to be very clear accounting. So, what you need to do, you want Michigan to have your information, you need to add Michigan to your FAFSA. So it goes over there. There's none of this just transfer. Send my pal over to Michigan. It's like, no, we're not a concierge, darling. You you need to add that on your FAFSA so it goes over there. That's one of the another common problem, especially with freshman students, because they may have been accepted somewhere and thought they were going because they haven't heard from their school they want to go to. Maybe they're on a wait list, then they get pulled off the wait list. Now I'm going, let's say UCLA. Now I'm going to UCLA. I can't wait. Then I tell Texas, can you just transfer my financial aid over to UCLA? No. You need to add them on the FAFSA. Make sure you're reading all of the new school, UCLA's deadlines, etc., other forms you may need to submit, and start the process over at the other school.
Wow.
Having said that, you cannot get financial aid at more than one school at the same time. So even though you may be attending more than one school at the same time, you can only get financial aid at one of the schools. Asterisk. Here's where there's a quasi exception. Let's say that I'm in my senior year, going into my senior year of college, and there's a class I need that's not offered that semester, but I want to graduate. Not only do you need to get in touch with an academic counselor, you need to get in touch with financial aid. Let's say I'm going to use the University of Texas kid. I'm at the University of Texas, and I learned that the class I need, it's offered at UCLA. Your school may, emphasis may, do a consortium agreement. And what that allows, and it can be complicated, is the University of Texas evaluating this class at UCLA that you want to take. Do you really need this to graduate? And if so, and we want to let you graduate, what we'll do is coordinate your enrollment with the University of Texas. And let's say it's 3-unit class. We're going to add your 3-unit class to the classes you're taking at Texas and pay you for that additional class at Texas. But you must have a consortium agreement, and both schools have to agree to do it. So what you have is a primary school, and in this example, it will be Texas because that's my home school. And then you have UCLA, which would be the secondary school, is what they would call it. So those schools need to be in agreement that this is going to happen because UCLA has to say, yeah, we will send over that student's transcripts to let you know that they passed that class or they're enrolled in that class, and you can go ahead and pay them the additional funds for this additional class.
Wow.
Is that a common occurrence?
No, it's not a common occurrence. But I do want to put that out there that that's an option because oftentimes that information is not on the website of these schools. So because it's not something that's publicized, it's probably something students learn about when they speak with an academic counselor, try to make sure they're going to graduate. And counselor notices they have a few classes they need to take, but it's not being offered there. Then that gets the ball rolling for the consortium agreement. I've done all your questions, so if you have more questions for me, I'm happy to answer them.
The
Oh,
website. Yeah, go ahead.
if I may interject, there is another problem that's very common. You wouldn't think it's a problem, common problem. People don't sign the FAFSA. It's not signed, it's invalid. So
Mm,
you'll have students who will, why haven't I heard anything? I did this months ago. Da, da, da. We look them up, and the school gets the information, but
mhm.
it just says you can't do it. Joe Sixpack applied. This is what he did. He didn't sign it. See, he didn't sign it. So again, going back to the snail mail, the text messaging, and the emails, you must read your emails daily when you apply for financial aid because they will tell you on that student aid report, as we talked about earlier, they will confirm this is what your entries were and what you may need to do. It'll tell you flat, you didn't sign this or your parent didn't sign this.
Mhm.
It's not going anywhere. It's a flat tire.
Mm. Oh, wow.
Well,
Wow.
it just seems like on this process, there are a lot of ways to end up in the problem pile.
Yes, there
Okay.
are.
And I don't know how is this treated? I mean, are they looking for ways just to throw it out, not have to do any work? Or are they really then saying, okay, well, we need more information from this student, or these names don't match up. Oh, throw it out. Or names don't match up. Let's ask the student. I mean, what is the perspective, the approach here? Are they just looking to throw it out? Or do they really want to, complete every application and give as much financial aid as possible to every student?
Are we speaking about the feds or are we speaking about the colleges?
The feds. Yeah. The feds. Yes.
They want students to complete their financial aid. I think the motto of federal student aid is, we pay for America's future or
Mm,
something like that. We're helping the future. Um, Educated people are healthier. There's less crime in neighborhoods where there are educated people. So yes, the federal government does want people to complete their FAFSA and get educated. Um, I do want to go back to what you said about being a problem pile and throwing it out.
mm,
I want to talk about people who get creative with their answers.
mm,
And what I mean is, they invent an answer that's not true. Um, Two things. It is apparent to me, and I could be wrong, but this is my opinion. When there have been fraud rings busted, and it's one of us or some of us, it tends to be at the top of the news of all things college.
mm,
And I recognize there are other people that do it too. But when we do it, we want to put it on Front Street. Having said that, some students who provide false information, creative information, I call it, have had their admissions offer rescinded
mhm,
because they lied on the FAFSA or CSS profile. Some schools, they don't care. They're just like, well, we ain't going to process you. So you give us a pound of flesh and these 5 documents from the IRS.
mhm.
Other schools are like, we don't like people who lie.
Yeah.
Deuces.
Yeah. Okay. So not to get too creative then, really to
Yes,
tell the truth. Yeah.
yes. One of the other common issues we have are students with undocumented parents.
Mm,
They now on the FAFSA it does ask for the parent's social security number and date of birth. I think start asking, but they also do database match with Social Security Administration.
mhm,
Make sure you're not using a deceased person's social security number or this is who you say you are. We
mhm.
have students who say, well, my parents don't have a social security number. You enter 9 zeros in lieu of a social security number. Then you have undocumented parents who say, I did not file a tax return because I'm undocumented. Well, if they've earned enough that requires them to file. IRS doesn't care you're supposed to be here or not. They want their cut.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And having said that, you can't have one hand out asking the federal government for help and another one behind your back hiding your resources.
Mhm. Mhm.
Having said one of the most common issues we get are married parents who both file a tax return, individual tax returns, as head of household. And that is typically done to get a better, bigger refund. What
Oh,
becomes a problem when they apply for financial aid because the parents are married and they have both filed head of household. We pulled the plug on it. This is not okay.
yeah.
You need to amend your tax return.
Wow. Okay. But they would. I mean,
So,
people get creative. And maybe they both, in their minds, they're the head of the household.
right, exactly. Exactly. I do want to mention something that's an issue common with Black people when we do the FAFSA is that in the tax questions, and I believe they've taken it off for next year. Let me make sure. Okay. On the tax questions, they've removed the number of the exemptions on the tax question. However, you have some students and or parents who will ask, well, we had 5 people in the household when my parents did the FAFSA, but now my cousin moved in with us.
Mm.
So now there's 6.
Mhm.
Um, but they will still put in head on the number of people in college, they'll still put 5. Now, I'm going to say this is something else to put on the sticky side of your brain. The number of exemptions or people that the parents support on the FAFSA is based on the past. The question for the number of people in the household is current and future. So,
Mm.
how many people live in your household today that you fill out the FAFSA were expected to still live there during the academic year? So, those two numbers do not have to match. Now, I've known of some financial aid administrators that insist they have to match. They do not. The federal regulations are very explicit, and one is on the tax return, the other is current and future. So you could even have a parent and or student that is pregnant and going to have a child during that academic year. That unborn child is also counted in the household.
Mm.
Okay.
The other thing I want to mention, and please don't let schools do this to you, is that your parents can have, or the student can have adult dependents that are not their children. So I always use this example. Your drunk uncle got fired again. Now he's living with y'all on the sofa. He's a dependent.
Mhm.
He's not working. Your parents are taking care of him. He doesn't need to be a minor.
Mhm. Mm.
I've known of some financial aid administrators that say, no, we're taking this person out. No, you fight it to the death. It's
Mhm.
not explicit in the regulations. It's people they are supporting, providing more than 50% of their support. Now, I
Yeah.
get some students that say, oh, that's semantics. I support my roommate because we couldn't make it without each other. No, that we ain't going for that. It has to be
Gosh.
somebody who is relying on you for their primary means of support.
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay. Okay. Wow, this is really, I mean, I finished my espresso, but this is such great information, honestly. And
Thank you.
some things that I thought were just really clear. It's like, okay, well, we could skip that part about name and address and all that kind of stuff. Well, no.
No, you can't.
Yeah,
Oh,
I get the impression you have to take each question literally and seriously.
Yes. And one of the things I try to tell people, because I get it, they especially if you look at the PDF, it's like worse than a 1040,
Hmm.
in the instructions. I get that. But take it in bite-sized pieces.
Hmm.
You have to cover up the other questions. Only show the question that you're working on. When you're doing it online, they've tried to put a lot of white space there so people are not overwhelmed with
Hmm.
it. I'm old school, pen and pencil. I print out the PDF and I put my entries on there and then I populate it online.
Hmm. Hmm.
well, how many pages did it come out to? Did it print out to? Yeah.
Excuse me.
Ye-
The FAFSA itself with the question is minus the instructions. 6 pages,
Okay. Okay.
Front and back or just front?
just front.
Or just front.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's just the questions itself, not the instructions, because the instructions are there
Hmm.
on the PDF.
Hmm.
Um, I would recommend before students and parents sit down to do the FAFSA, everybody get your Social Security card out. Make sure you can see it so you're not put over to the side in the problem pile.
Hmm.
Get your tax returns out, get all your bank statements out.
Hmm.
You have a green card, get that out. Have all that stuff ready to go.
Oh, okay. And then, I mean, if they're doing it online, then they do allow you to, to stop and save and come back to it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely can stop and save and come back to it. Not uncommon at all. And I recognize some people may be overwhelmed with it. And it's like I can only do 20 questions today. I will come back tomorrow. That's fine. You can stop and go back.
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, this, when did this FAFSA, when did this form begin? I don't remember using this form when I applied. Yeah.
Okay, so the FAFSA was born in 1992. Prior to the FAFSA, there was a form called the FAF,
Hmm.
and it pretty much was the CSS profile. And you did have to pay to apply for
Yeah.
federal and state aid. So in
Hmm.
92, paying for it went away and the FAFSA was born.
Wow.
Okay. Do you think it's an improvement over the FAF? I mean, this process and this application?
No. And the reason I say that is because, again, with each passing year, it gets more rigid,
Mhm.
based on the entries and what we need to look at. So, again, if you know somebody's milking the system, be mad at them. Don't be mad at financial aid for asking for all this documentation. It's because people have abused the system that it becomes more convoluted and more database matches.
Wow.
There is one database match that came within the last 5, 10 years called unusual enrollment history. So if they see you going to a lot of different schools, typically that's a pattern done by fraudsters, is they
Mm.
just hop from school to school to get financial aid.
Mhm. Mhm.
Well, I recognize, and so does the federal government recognizes that people move a lot. Maybe your parents are in the military. Maybe you were in a flood zone and you had to move temporarily and then finally find a place. So now you're at your third, fourth college. So what the student has to do is prove that they've earned passing grades at all these different colleges.
Mhm.
If they cannot show that they've not passed, if they cannot show that they've successfully passed, and we see W's and F's and withdrawals, and you're not making any progress, and you don't have an extenuating circumstance, it's not going to get approved.
Mm.
You're just hopping from school to school.
Mhm.
Hmm. And
Wow.
do they tell you too why you're not being approved for something, or do you have to kind
Oh,
of?
absolutely. Absolutely. On the student aid report, for example, in this situation, somebody has unusual enrollment history. It will mention something like your school's going to ask you for more information. And what happens when the student gets a student aid report? Schools who are listed on the FAFSA get their data as well.
Mm.
So, the software looks at it and says, oh, they have this flag for unusual enrollment. So we send out, this is your appeal form. This is what we need to know. We need your transcripts. Tell us what happened. So every school that they apply to and listed that on in the FAFSA, they get the same message. So if you're applying to 10 different schools and you don't know which one you're going to, they're all going to ask you what happened and we want your transcripts.
Mhm, mhm.
Okay. Okay. Oh, well, that's helpful though, at least to know what they need. Yeah. Well, let's see. So there's bigfuture.org, there's studentaid.gov,
Yes,
there's 1-800 4 number 4 Fed Aid.
yes,
Um, yeah. And then high school counselors and I suppose and then these what is it? They are workshops too. You said are very helpful to people.
yes.
Yeah, Kim, it occurred to me there could be parents out there who say, I'm not giving you anything. You're on your own. You've graduated from high school. I'm not giving you my tax information and I'm not signing anything. What would the student do in that situation?
Okay, so their first option would be to contact the financial aid office at the school they want to attend, explain the situation to them, whether it be in writing or verbally. The school can take latitude and say, okay, we're just going to give you an unsubsidized direct loan, which is a loan from the federal government, because this is the loan that's typically given to students without financial need. In addition to the unsubsidized direct loan, the student should also apply for scholarships. There are scholarships out there that are not interested in the parent information. So don't
Mm,
disqualify yourself by saying, well, FAFSA wouldn't take it, so I can't do anything. I hear that so much. They find one morsel of a problem and then they just abandon the whole thing.
mm.
Don't abandon the whole thing. You can still apply for scholarships.
I have another question. Okay, let's assume the student says, I did everything right. My parents signed everything. They put in all the information and I was still denied. Do I have a right to appeal?
Okay, I want to go back to the word denied. Because that's typically not a word that's used when determining someone's financial aid eligibility. What they may say is they're not Pell Grant eligible.
Not approved or something like that.
Yeah, they would just say you're not Pell Grant eligible or you weren't eligible for need-based aid,
Mhm.
but here's what you are eligible for.
So there's
Or
always something you're eligible for?
there's typically something you're eligible for.
Okay, sorry.
So, and again, those are those outside scholarships.
Mm,
Also, in the four-year institutions and graduate professional institutions, a lot of them have their own money, or they have specific donors that only work with them and their students, where students can apply for financial aid scholarships on the website of the school that they're attending or want to attend.
mm,
So you could have a lot of applications out there for multiple things. Well, the most important one is the FAFSA, because
mm.
some scholarships will ask you, did you do the FAFSA? And they may not be interested in the finance part of it, but they want to make sure you're not using somebody else's social security number.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, do most 16, well, 17 or 18-year-olds have social security numbers now? Does that just come along with the birth certificate, or do you really have to apply? I know I had to apply for that proactively. Are they just assigned that now, or?
Most children born are given a social security number shortly thereafter because you need it to file a taxes to claim them as a dependent.
Oh, yeah. Mm.
Okay.
So yeah, for people who are born here, you don't have a social security card. I got side eye.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, and I don't know, maybe I'm revealing my age, but I didn't get mine until I was 17, and
Yeah,
they weren't
yeah.
asking for that then. So,
I
okay.
think back then when people were claiming dependents on tax returns, they weren't asking for a social security number.
Mm.
Once the IRS started asking for social security numbers of dependents, because you have everybody claiming this one kid. It's like, no, everybody ain't gonna claim this one kid. We got one social security number per tax return.
Well, this has been actually, I don't know, Mel, if you have any more questions, but I know this has been just fantastic. But I also realize that this is one side of it. And then there's also for people who are getting loans, particularly these unsubsidized loans, this, then they'll be talking about repayment too later on. And I think that there may be something to dive into there. Kim, what do you think?
I think that's a good idea to talk about student loans. Um, right now, the situation is very fluid for student loan forgiveness because there are many lawsuits about the student loan forgiveness. So we could talk about student loans, well, the life of a student loan, because the regulations for student loans are over 800 pages. So
Oh, well,
yeah,
let me get another espresso here. Okay.
yeah,
I think you're
there's
gonna
a
have a
lot.
double.
Yeah, there's a lot to know about student loans. So yes, I would be more than happy to do another session. Submit your questions. I love your questions because oftentimes it's things that I don't think of
Mm, mm.
because I know this stuff. So get questions from real people on the other side of this application helps me to answer questions that many other people may have.
Okay, great. And actually, that's a really good idea too. I'm going to start opening this up to our listeners to send in questions too.
Oh, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, because I know, yeah, we can't think of everything, can we? So,
No, we can't. No, we can't.
yes. Well, Kim, I have to say a big asante sana to you, a big thank you to you for being here today and having an espresso with me and Mel.
You're
Yeah.
welcome. I enjoyed it.
Well, thank you. I mean, it's the information you've given us has been so valuable, and I like the approach of let's just do one line at a time. I'll start with my name,
Right, right,
make sure I get
right.
that right, and then go to the next line.
Right, exactly, exactly. Instead of just rushing through it, rushing through it is just not going to end well.
No, or yeah, making assumptions about. I mean, I made an assumption about, well, the name, that's an easy thing, but it really isn't for many people. So take it all seriously and just answer it
Mm-hmm.
all completely and fully and then review. So
Yeah,
yeah. So thank you again, and
you're
we look
welcome
forward to
again.
you coming back and talking everyone's favorite topic, debt repayment, loan repayment. Yay!
Right.
Oh my God. Oh God.
Thank you, Kim.
Yeah,
You've just
you're
been
welcome.
so helpful.
You're welcome. I enjoy this, as you can tell.
Yeah, yeah. And we're glad that you do. It really comes through and it's helping so many people.
Mm.
So,
I'm glad to know that.
okay. Well, thank you again, and we will see you next time.
Okay, bye bye.
Bye for now.
Bye.
This ends today's discussion about the FAFSA with Kim Bradley. Jumbo community, it's Amo Robin again. Wow, this was an interesting and amazing experience, I think. Kim Bradley really brought it, didn't she? And you thought this discussion about financial aid for college would be boring. Just admit it. I think you did. No worries. I get it. That's why we are so lucky to have a sister like Kim Bradley here to teach us about the important must do's and the essential must not do's about completing the FAFSA form. Actually, I think the must not do's are almost more important than the must do's. But all of it is important, even beginning with writing your correct name on the application. Kim is not shy about giving you this information. She actually is very positive and reassuring and realistic, and that is really empowering. Kim wants to help your application stay out of that problem pile. She mentioned that several times. What? You can end up in the problem pile. But she can help you, your application, to stay out of that problem pile and for your application to get processed quickly and easily. But you have to do the work. Kim mentioned several websites that are helpful, and they are websites that I put in the show notes. So if you don't have those, then you can go to the show notes and you can get them there. And don't hesitate to use those resources. I want to give a special attention to bigfutures.org because they have a scholarship that they offer every single month. The scholarship is pretty substantial too. It's not nothing. So go there every month, multiple times, and that enters you into the raffle for the scholarship. That is, unless you just don't need a $40,000 scholarship for college. If you don't need it, don't bother. But for the rest of us, I'm going. Asante Sana to financial aid specialist Kim Bradley for generously donating her time and energy and expertise to us and to you. And Asante Sana to you as well for showing up and staying with us. We appreciate you and your presence and your continued support. You really are the reason that we do what we do every single day. And you can join us every day to discuss these issues on Instagram at AmaRobinL, formerly Espresso Talk Today. Check out my profile, leave your questions, comments, reflections, and just about anything you want to say. I want to hear from you, and I am here for you. And if you think other people would be interested in this Black Empowerment Podcast show, please send this show to them. We got to start talking about these issues, and we got to keep talking about them. And if you do want to keep discussing them or just reading about them, then you should definitely subscribe to my weekly newsletter, The Nomo Beat. We discuss lots of different issues there, and you can get your dose of Black empowerment every single week. It comes every Sunday. It's never a dull moment. There's lots of growth moments, though. You can subscribe at the Espresso Talk Today website, espressotalktoday.com, or on Instagram at my profile page, AmaRobinL. I'm Ama Robin for Espresso Talk Today. And remember, now more than ever, strength, soul, and reparations. Ashe, community.